This information meeting will have two parts. One, I'll try to give you some idea of what the ODIN program entails, how it works, and how it might offer some value to you and a funding opportunity to you. And then, because this is a different type of program where we work entirely without patents, my colleague, business developer Connie, will take the stage and try to give you some examples of what, in fact, a patent-free industry-university collaboration could look like, because that might be new to many of you. But in essence, ODIN is a collaboration platform where university researchers and companies join forces and co-create research projects where they work entirely without patents and where they share their results, the foreground knowledge that they create in the project, with the public. And I'll try to explain why in just a few minutes, but I'll want to draw your attention to these call guidelines that we have issued. You can find them at our webpage or by following this QR code, because everything that I'll be saying today will be described in more details in these guidelines. And it's a good idea to familiarize yourself with these because they will answer most of your question, I believe. Good. But ODIN, in brief, is a collaboration platform where we take a grant of 180.2 million Danish kroners that we have received from the Novo Nordisk Foundation and parcel it out into smaller grants through a competitive and peer-reviewed funding process. And that will happen over the next 5 years. We've already opened the first call this time around, and we have 5 partnering universities, and the only requirement in terms of participants must be that there is at least one university researcher from a partnering university and a company included. But other than that, you can collaborate with whomever you want, other universities, companies from around the world, hospitals, not-for-profit organizations, whatever you want, as long as they accept our open terms, that we work pre-competitively, that we work without patents, and that we share the results of our projects with the world. There are no fees for participating. Good. So how does this in fact work? Well, we offer a platform where researchers and companies can sign on and share ideas for projects they want to do. They will use the networks of potential contributors from those 5 universities, from a broad range of companies and other types of organizations, to ask around if they need input for their idea, if they need partners. We can help you find them through this platform. It's a way of showcasing yourself. If you don't have your partners, you can also showcase yourself through different types of matchmaking initiatives that we will be offering up, and I'll describe those in a minute. Also, if you still haven't found the partner that you need, you can contact us, the Secretariat, and we'll try to present your idea to relevant partners. If you already have your team set, companies and researchers, that's fine. This is only an offer for you to expand your circle, to improve your idea. But if you have your team set or get it through our matchmaking processes, and there must be both a company and a tenured researcher from a partnering university present in your team. And you have an idea that doesn't just benefit those people in the team, but is of broad relevance to many other groups or companies or even disease areas, then you're good to go to actually apply for an ODIN project. If you get it, if you get a grant, we ask in return, and that's the bottom half of this drawing, that you share your results with the public, the foreground knowledge from your project. We don't share background knowledge, we share the foreground knowledge that is created within the project. And all of that is being regulated by a legal framework that has been co-created by the TTO from your university and the partnering companies. So it has worked out beautifully in a pilot project that we did, so we expect it to do the same in this time around. So it doesn't really matter that your open results will be open to the world, even your competitors, because what we are doing in the ODIN projects is not to develop fully formed commercial solutions or something that needs to be protected up front. We are developing a knowledge foundation for future innovation. In the first pilot version of ODIN, we focused on identifying biomarkers, validating new target groups, creating new research tools, screening platforms, human disease models, an understanding of how disease mechanisms work, stuff like that. It's about creating a knowledge foundation that we can all stand on and de-risk downstream innovation decisions, such as finding the right candidate to take through the risky clinical trials. And anyone can and must be able to use your open resource for whatever purpose they like afterwards. Those are the terms. And we can see from our pilot project, but also from international programs that work in a similar manner, that the companies will prefer to actually mature these open results in closed contracted projects afterwards outside of ODIN with IP negotiations and the works. They will try to mature the open results towards some sort of specific commercial application that can be protected, and you can do the same, of course. So that's the open terms here. All foreground knowledge from our projects must be open. We don't share background knowledge. Materials and confidential information can be exchanged within the project, though, if you find it necessary. And that means that companies often lend the project compound materials, for instance, or other types of materials that can benefit the project, but they maintain ownership over that, and it won't be shared with the public. And anyone must be able to use the open resource for commercial purposes downstream. There can be no restrictions. So that's the model. But rest assured, we have tested this, although it might seem a bit different from the way you usually work, because we had a pilot version of ODIN. And we also had an evaluation carried out to find out how we did. And the evaluator stated, based on interviews with both companies and researchers involved, that this model greatly reduces the barriers for collaboration. When there are no IP involved, there's no IP negotiations that can drag out for forever, and that greatly helps people collaborate. And we will also help you find the right partners if you haven't got them to begin with. Because the funding comes from the Novo Nordisk Foundation and not the company involved, this also means that your company partner can take on more wild ideas than they usually do in university industry collaborations. So this program has a relatively high risk profile. We're doing more exploratory, high risk, high reward projects, but because the projects are also co-created with industry to begin with, this means that they are based on industry needs, and that makes it easier for companies to translate even early stage exploratory research into use afterwards and downstream innovation. We had a lot of companies join us and a lot of group leaders, much more than expected when we did the first pilot, and we funded 11 projects, and collectively they are planning or have already published more than 40 publications, of which half is with their industry partners, indicating that once you have formed a collaboration in ODIN, the partners tend to continue the work together. And so they have in 10 out of 11 of our projects, they are planning for follow-on projects to mature those open results for some sort of commercial application. And while we've been doing this, there's been no decline in the number of invention disclosures at the university. So it is created with the tech transfer offices and does not clash with the traditional way of actually trying to valorise knowledge. This time around, in the program that you're interested in, our scientific scope is drug discovery and diagnostics, and the diagnostics part is a bit new to us. We focused on drug discovery the first time around, and the Novo Nordisk Foundation has approved a scientific scope that focuses on some of the major threats to human health, being cardiovascular and cardiometabolic diseases and infectious diseases. But if you're not working with that in that field, 1/3 of the funding allocated for research projects, which is still more than our entire pilot project, can be earmarked for projects within other disease areas. The focus is more generic on a specific approach, a technological platform that can benefit many or several disease areas at once, but you can explore it within one disease area if you want, for instance, cancer, neuro, what have you. So I think you can be creative and fit almost any project within that category. I believe that has been our experience so far. In addition to this, other companies and foundations are more than welcome to sponsor individual calls. We've had some interest in that, so that the scientific scope can actually be expanded over the next 5 years. So who can apply? Well, you need to, the main applicant must be a tenured researcher from a partnering university, but there must also be a company involved, at least one, preferably more. But once that is accounted for, you can set your team in whatever way you want. You can collaborate with international universities, hospitals, not-for-profit organizations, whatever you want. But only the not-for-profit organization can actually receive funding, because that's part of the rules and the regulations of the Novo Nordisk Foundation. But it hasn't been a problem for other companies so far. We don't require any in-cash contributions for them for the projects. There's no membership fee. We don't even demand that they must register the time spent within the project. But they do deliver in-kind contributions by being part of the project and carrying out some work packages. In some cases, they lend us material that our researchers don't usually have access to, or carry out analysis on in-house equipment, stuff like that. They could also mentor the postdocs that are employed in the project. There are many ways of contributing. What you can apply for this time around in 2024 is a grant type that allows you to do research projects of up to 3 years of duration and a maximum of 7 million Danish kroner. You can do smaller projects, shorter projects, of course, but this is the max. And that max has been defined as a sweet spot by the previous participants, saying, if it gets any larger than this, it's very difficult for the intimate knowledge exchange that we want in ODIN projects to occur. So that was the upper limit defined by companies and researchers from the previous ODIN. And we have a steering group who has decided to allocate 30 million Danish kroner in total for this call, but there will be future calls where they can front load with more funding. And the reason why they've set 30 million this time around is because they wanted everybody to get used to this type of call. Of course, Aarhus University, where we did the pilot, they have grown accustomed to this, but they want the other university to have equal opportunities into this. So we are starting small. Should there arise some sort of situation where we have many more applications who are eligible for funding, the steering group can reconsider this amount as well. But we had a pretty good and high hit rate in the first ODIN, because this is a different program that many of our researchers were used to applying for. Good. So we have a series of eligible costs that are pretty standard for the Novo Nordisk Foundation. So you probably recognize most of them. As you know from the Novo Nordisk Foundation, if you're employed at a university, you can't cover your own base salary. They don't do double funding, but you can, of course, cover the salaries for the scientific and technical personnel that you hire into the project. You can cover standard operating expenses and minor equipment, conference participations, and so forth. You can also fund costs for subcontractors, but you can't use that opportunity as a way to actually secure your industry partner a piece of the budget. If you use subcontractors, they can't be part of the project as a partner at the same time. And then, of course, we have the administrative fee and the bench fee that you can also apply for. As something new, we are covering the cost for open publications. When we require you to share your results openly, we will help you with pointing to relevant open databases and give you a manual for that. But of course, it's also the intent that you must do open publications. You can use bioarchive and stuff like that, but if you are aiming for that open nature publication, we can cover the cost of that as well if you include it in the budget to begin with. All right. So all of the incoming applications will be reviewed by 3 different reviewing bodies, one double-blinded, and I'll return to that in a minute, but they will all use the same selection criteria. Many of them, you know, scientific excellence and creating a cost-effective budget. But this is a program for open innovation. So the problem that you set out to solve must somehow open up new innovation opportunities downstream. We don't expect you to create new products or services or processes within the time span of a 3-year project. No, that's not the case, but you must somehow just demonstrate that if you solve this problem, that will allow the companies or yourself to actually pursue some innovation opportunities downstream. If you can do that in the application, you are very, very good to go. Company partners must be active. They must be involved in the actual project by carrying out work packages, lending you materials, what have you. And also interdisciplinarity is a central criterion, because the openness and the part where you can actually source inputs and partners from a crowd, even from non-obvious sources, lends itself nicely to interdisciplinarity. We've seen from similar initiatives abroad that if you have this crowd of contributors, if you are able to share openly, then you can collectively take on more complex issues together than any one of you would be able to do alone. And we hope that you will take that opportunity in the ODIN program and use that and come up with some interdisciplinary projects. But what we require is that at any time you must be able to demonstrate that you have the necessary competencies in your team to solve the problem that you set out to solve. We also have a criterion called broadness and value creation. Essentially, that means that your project can't just benefit you or the rest of the partners in your project group. It must be a problem that is shared by many companies, for instance, many research groups, and if so, will also benefit many and open up new opportunities for many downstream. It could also be that your results can be transferred, or your technology platform can be transferred to other disease areas. So there are many ways of actually demonstrating that broadness, and we have instructions in our guidelines and in the application template to give you some examples of what that could look like. And of course, there can't be anything in your project design that will hinder open sharing of your data. If you're still in doubt about what an ODIN project could look like, I don't blame you. It is a little bit different. At this webpage, you can find here marked in blue in the menu above, something called research projects, and you will be able to see descriptions of the 11 projects that we have funded so far. I will take the questions that just popped up a minute ago in the Q&A session, and we can address them there. And you'll find description of how these projects have been designed. There are testimonials from the partners and what they have achieved. Also, Connie will take the stage in just a few minutes to let you know a little bit about what they have looked like. And you can contact your local business developer at your university to discuss whether or not your idea is suited for this open setup. You can find the details here and in the guidelines. So in many ways, the application steps in ODIN looks pretty much like a standard call, except for the initial part where you can find input and partners for your idea. If you haven't got them already, we will help you do so. And the way that you can use those offers are to actually enter our digital matchmaking platform that I'll give you the QR code for in just a moment, and present your idea there, or to do a live pitch to an audience at a Teams meeting in June. That's also an opportunity. We've just had a kickoff meeting with I think 15 pitches, and they got a lot of response from industry and other academics, so that was great. And again, in the end, you can contact us if you're still lacking a partner, and we can try helping you out by contact some of the core partners that we have. But one way to get started would be to sign up to our matchmaking platform if you haven't already. You can find it here using that QR code, and there's also a link in the guidelines. And you can create your own profile demonstrating what you're interested in, what would you excel within, and you can find partners using different filters here on the left side of the page, finding industry partners, finding other academics interested in working with the same thing. And you can create small ideas following a template that we have provided, where you can showcase what you're looking for in terms of inputs. Again, sign up for the pitches if you need a partner, because that's really the most effective way of finding them. And much like what we're doing today, recording the session, we can do that for you so that we can circulate it within the community for those who won't be able to make it on the day. The latter steps of the application process entails you writing a short abstract to begin with, and that needs to be handed in by the end of August. And a month later, you will know whether or not the reviewing committees have selected your abstract as one of those who will be invited to do a full-length application that must be handed in mid-November. And then you will know in January whether or not you have received the grant. You can find the application again on that digital matchmaking platform, because that's where we do all of our application and reviews. It's an online process, so you can find it there, and you must submit your abstract there, as you can see. If you're having trouble finding out how the platform works, reach out, we can help you. And your abstracts and your full-length application will be reviewed by 3 different panels. First up is what is called the Project Review Committee. They will look at all of your abstracts. They consist of university researchers and industry representatives, and they will look at the abstracts and nominate the best for full-length application. Those will be reviewed by that committee again, but also a double-blinded panel called the International Review Panel. And the reason that they're double-blinded is they won't receive any personal information from you. They don't know who the applicants are. So in that way, it's a mechanism for us to counter any unconscious bias in terms of gender or seniority, and that's worked out pretty well in the pilot version of ODIN. So together, those 2 panels will nominate the best ones for funding, and the steering group, again consisting of representatives from the partnering universities and industry, will figure out who will get the funding. So the important dates, and that's the last slide from me here, is you can do pitches in June. Sign up for that if you're interested. You must have posted your idea on the digital matchmaking platform by August 7th, and submit your abstract by the end of August 30th. 1 month later, you will know whether or not you have been invited to do a full-length application, and that needs to be handed in mid-November. And again, you will have your answer in late January, whether or not you have a grant. So get started today by finding the guidelines.
Yeah, so what could an ODIN project look like? I think first of all, it's important to highlight again that ODIN is all about co-creation, collaboration, and partnership. Because as you've heard, ODIN projects, they are to be designed and created in collaboration by academia and industry. The projects are to demonstrate results that are highly relevant for downstream innovation. They should be useful for, obviously, the project participants, but also the results should become available and applicable for industry as such, or at least for a sort of industry general within the field. Then last but not least, as you've heard, the results will be published without any prior filing of IP. And that's important, and I think it's sort of a huge difference compared to the usual mode of action, how we work. I'll get back to that later, but I think first I would like just to briefly sort of explain to you a couple of the projects that has been conducted in ODIN already. So one example being the BioMedScope project led by Lasse Sommer. This is a project aiming for identifying new and promising biomarkers and potential drug targets that down the line can be used in the fight against metastatic colorectal cancer. So here they've had a special focus on exploring the invasive tumor fronts and identified biomarkers and other targets. And they will then, the work will be published now, and they will later on in other settings further characterize the sort of the relevant pools of markers they've identified. So that's one example. Another example being the BELDER project led by Peter Sørensen. Peter and his team have developed a novel and comprehensive statistical software package aiming to help identify new biomarkers and drug targets. They've developed the tool based on already existing genomic data on type 2 diabetes. And then going forward for the downstream innovation, it will be possible also to use this mathematical model to study other relevant diseases. A third project is the Cell Plus project, led by Duncan Sutherland. Duncan and his team have worked on establishment a cell culture assay by depositing proteins into nanopatterns in the cell culture will coding, and that will mimic the natural environment better, mimicking the setting in the human body. So here we have an example of a project of an assay that will help to generate a better translation of an in vitro experimental assay into the human setting. So this was a few examples, and I hope you sort of by means of that can get a feeling for the variety of project types that is suitable in the ODIN platform. You can sort of identify and study elements involved in a known pathway, then yet afterwards to be further characterized and correlated to functionality. You can develop screening assays, again, to be further developed for a specific target identification or drug development. You can use one disease to develop a model, then yet the model being applicable for studying other diseases. And you can develop computational tools by doing in silico research. And I think it's important here in the current program to highlight, these are just examples. You should not be limited to sort of those project types. It's because that's where we have the experience to build on, because the ODIN pilot, the ODIN 1 program, had a focus on biomarkers and drug targets. Again, Marie-Louise mentioned it before, get inspired. I would really recommend you to go on the Open ODIN webpage, look under the research projects and go in and read about it. And also there is this magazine out. You can also find it on the webpage. You have actually descriptions of all the projects that has been conducted so far, both also with comments from academia and industry. So use that to get inspired. Then, of course, you need to recall the current scientific scope, as Marie-Louise mentioned, and also to recall and consider that this is a platform operating on what we call open IP model. And to touch on that, when you design your project, you have to keep these 4 P's in mind: pre-competitive, patent-free, publication, and public domain. As you've heard, it's a central principle in ODIN that the projects are to be pre-competitive in nature, meaning that the results will be too early or too fundamental to be eligible for patent protection, because the results will be published and shall be published without any prior filing of IP, which means that all results generated in ODIN will be part of the public domain. So therefore, when you scope your idea, when you design your project, you'd need to sort of to stipulate or predict the relevant, the results, the outcome, taking this into consideration, because it will be it will be very early projects that you are that you're using for the platform, and you'd need to sort of to scope it in a way that you won't cross the border, where you get more specific, and that's of course the obvious question. So exactly what does pre-competitive mean versus competitive? And I think the honest answer is there is no clear definition. It's not black and white. It's a case-by-case assessment. But to give you sort of some keywords, some guidelines to assess that, I think when you're preparing pre-competitive projects, some keywords would be explorative and early. If you, as I said, study elements in a pathway, if you identify biomarkers that would need further investigation for any relevant application, then it's very likely that you are in the pre-competitive field and you're on the same safe side, and it'll be suitable as an ODIN project. On the other hand, if you sort of expect your results to be specific or to make a clear demonstration, if, for instance, you expect to identify specific sequences, biomarker cutoff thresholds for patient elections, lead compound candidates, and the like, then it's very likely that you've crossed the border and you are operating in the competitive field, where filing of IP would be or will be highly relevant. So you sort of have to navigate in that and try to find the sort of the right borders for your project. As I said, there is no clear definition. It is a case-by-case assessment, and that's one of the reasons why that we want you to get in touch with the business developers. We are there is a key account business developer at each of the 5 partner universities. You can find us on the webpage, and Marie-Louise also showed a slide with our names. So so get in touch and have the dialogue. And then also, I think it's important to stress that the projects are to be designed in dialogue, in a dialogue between academia and industry. Because of course, industry also need to be aware of the fact that results will be published. And I think based on the experiences we have from the ODIN 1 project, it's kind of this about assessing if it's pre-competitive or not. It is kind of self-regulating in the sense that if academia and industry can agree to openly share the results, then very likely it's pre-competitive. If industry find that they need the results of this project to be secure by IP in order to secure their business, they will tell us, they will tell you. So it's important to have the dialogue and to define the project in collaboration. And that actually leads me to what I initially highlighted. I think ODIN is all about co-creation, collaboration, and partnership. And I think besides funding, you could also see ODIN, the ODIN platform, as a stepstone to engage with industry, with new industry or academia, to establish and build up new collaborations, and to explore the potential for a continued collaboration. Because as Marie-Louise also mentioned, follow-up projects, sort of continued collaboration after the ODIN results has been published. It's perfectly fine to keep collaborating in a closed setting where IP publication and all that is settled in agreement, sort of the usual way that we work. in research collaboration agreements. It's perfectly fine, and it's actually sort of one of the goals also for the ODIN, because of course one want the result of ODIN project to be picked up and to be used in further downstream innovation for fulfilling the mission.